You have spent years asking everyone else what to do. You have consulted friends when you should have known the answer already. You have scrolled through advice columns at 3 a.m, hoping someone on the internet could tell you what feels right. You have replayed conversations in your mind, dissecting tone and subtext, searching for clues about what you should think, what you should want, what you should become. You have stood in front of your closet, paralyzed by the question of what to wear. You have typed and deleted text messages a dozen times, wondering if your words sound right, if they will be received well, if you are saying too much or not enough. You have agreed to plans you didn't want, simply because someone else seemed certain and you were not. You have asked your partner what they think you should do about your job. You have asked your mother whether you should move to a new city. You have asked your best friend if they think you are making a mistake. And when their answers conflicted, when one person said yes and another said no, you felt more lost than before. The doubt sits heavy in your chest now. It has been there so long you barely notice it anymore, this low hum of uncertainty that colors every choice, every moment, every path forward. You have learned to live with it the way you learn to live with chronic pain, by adjusting, by compensating, by pretending it is normal to feel this way. But it is not normal, and somewhere deep inside, you know this. You know because you remember a time, maybe long ago, when decisions felt simpler, when you could choose something just because you wanted it, when you did not need permission from the world to trust your own knowing. That person still exists inside you, but they have been buried under years of second-guessing, years of being told your instincts were wrong, years of seeking safety in the certainty of others because your own certainty felt too fragile, too dangerous, too likely to shatter under scrutiny. And so you have become a stranger to yourself. You have become someone who checks and rechecks, who polls and surveys, who cannot move forward without consensus. You have become someone who waits for external validation before you allow yourself to want something, to believe something, to choose something. This is exhausting. You know it is exhausting because you feel it in your body, the tightness in your shoulders when someone asks you what you think and you freeze, scrambling to figure out what they want to hear. The knot in your stomach when you have to make a decision and no one is there to tell you which option is correct. The heaviness in your limbs when you realize you have spent another entire day doing things you did not truly want to do, simply because you could not trust yourself enough to say no. You are tired of living this way, tired of the constant doubt, tired of feeling like a passenger in your own life, waiting for someone else to take the wheel and steer you toward certainty. But here is what you may not have realized yet. The doubt is not a reflection of your inadequacy. It is not proof that you are broken or incapable or fundamentally flawed. The doubt is a symptom of disconnection. You have been cut off from your own inner voice for so long that you no longer recognize its sound, and that disconnection did not happen by accident. You were taught to distrust yourself. You were taught by the adults who corrected you when you expressed what you wanted, who told you that your feelings were too much or not enough, who made you believe that your instincts were unreliable. You were taught by the environments that punished mistakes and rewarded compliance, that valued obedience over authenticity, that trained you to look outward for approval rather than inward for truth. You were taught by a world that benefits from your uncertainty, a world that profits when you do not trust yourself, when you need someone else to tell you what to buy, what to believe, what to become, a world that thrives on your doubt because doubt makes you malleable, controllable, easy to influence. But you are not here to remain malleable. You are not here to stay small and uncertain and dependent on the shifting opinions of others. You are here because something inside you has had enough. You are here because you are ready to reclaim the voice you have been ignoring. The voice that has been whispering beneath the noise, beneath the advice, beneath the endless mental chatter of what if, and should I, and am I sure? The voice that knows things before your rational mind catches up. The voice that has been waiting patiently for you to come home. This is not a journey about becoming someone new. This is a journey about remembering who you have always been. It is about learning to trust yourself again, not blindly, not recklessly, but deeply and deliberately. It is about building a relationship with your own instincts, your own desires, your own knowing. It is about reclaiming your sovereignty, one small decision at a time, until the day comes when you no longer need to ask everyone else what to do, because you already know. And you will know. Not because you will suddenly have all the answers, not because doubt will disappear entirely, but because you will have learned to navigate uncertainty without collapsing into it. Because you will have discovered that trusting yourself does not mean being right all the time. It means being willing to stand by your choices, to learn from your mistakes, to adjust and adapt without abandoning yourself in the process. By the end of this journey, you will no longer second-guess yourself into paralysis. You will no longer defer to others when you already know what feels true. You will no longer live as a stranger to your own instincts. You will know how to pause, to listen, to discern what is fear and what is wisdom. You will know how to make decisions with clarity and conviction, even when the path ahead is uncertain. You will know how to trust yourself more deeply than you have ever trusted anyone else. This is the promise. This is where we are going. But we cannot get there by pretending the struggle does not exist. We cannot bypass the pain, the confusion, the years of conditioning that brought you to this moment. We have to start where you are, in the doubt, in the exhaustion, in the quiet desperation of not knowing who to believe anymore. We have to start by naming what has been lost, and what has been lost is not your ability to trust yourself. What has been lost is your awareness of that ability, your connection to it, your faith in it. You haven't forgotten how to trust yourself. You have only forgotten how to listen. And listening is a skill that can be relearned. It requires patience. It requires practice. It requires a willingness to sit with discomfort, to tolerate ambiguity, to resist the urge to immediately seek reassurance from someone, anyone, who might tell you that you are doing it right. But it is possible. It has always been possible. You are not broken. You are simply disconnected. And connection can be restored. It begins here. It begins now. It begins with the recognition that the voice you have been searching for, the certainty you have been seeking, the knowing you have been desperate to find, it was never outside of you. It was always here. You just had to learn to listen. So we will listen together. We will peel back the layers of doubt and conditioning and fear. We will examine where this disconnection came from, why it persists, and how to bridge the gap between who you are and who you have been trained to be. We will explore the science of self-trust, the stages of reclaiming it, the tools and practices that make it real and sustainable. We will talk about what to do when the pressure is high, when everyone around you has an opinion, when the stakes feel too great to risk being wrong. and we will talk about what it feels like on the other side, when you no longer need permission to exist, when you can stand in your own knowing without apology, when you move through the world with the quiet confidence of someone who has come home to themselves. This is not about perfection. This is not about never doubting again. This is about building a foundation strong enough to hold you when doubt arises, when life gets hard, when the ground beneath you shifts, and you need something solid to stand on. That something solid is you. It has always been you. You just have to remember. So let us begin. Let us start with the truth of where you are right now, the weight of the doubt you carry, the cost of living as a stranger to yourself. Let us look at it clearly, without shame, without judgment, with the understanding that this is not your fault, and that it does not have to be your future. You are ready for this. You would not be here if you were not. The voice you have been ignoring is ready too. It has been waiting for you to turn toward it, to acknowledge it, to give it space to speak. And when you do, everything changes. Not all at once, not without effort, but slowly, steadily, inevitably, you will find your way back to yourself. And when you do, you will wonder how you ever lived any other way. This is the journey. This is the promise. This is where we begin. You know what it feels like to stand frozen in a grocery aisle, staring at two nearly identical containers of yogurt, unable to choose. Your rational mind knows it does not matter. Your rational mind knows that either option is fine, that this is not a decision with consequences, that you could close your eyes and pick one, and your life would continue exactly as before. But your body does not believe this. Your body feels the familiar tightness creeping up your spine, the slight acceleration of your heartbeat, the way your thoughts begin to spiral. What if this one has more sugar? What if that one is a better value? What if you choose wrong and regret it later, standing in your kitchen, holding the container you should not have bought, knowing you made a mistake over something as small as yogurt? So you stand there. You read the labels again. You compare prices. You pull out your phone to check reviews, to see what other people recommend, to find some external validation that will make the decision feel safe. And by the time you finally choose, you are exhausted, drained by a choice that should have taken 3 seconds, ashamed that something so simple required so much effort, aware on some level that this is not normal, that other people do not live this way, that other people simply reach for what they want and move on. But you do not know how to be one of those people anymore. This is what it means to live without self-trust. This is the cost. It shows up everywhere. In every decision, every interaction, every moment where you are required to know your own mind. It shows up when you are getting dressed in the morning and you change your outfit 4 times because you cannot tell if you look right. It shows up when you are ordering food at a restaurant and you ask your dining companion what they are getting, hoping their choice will guide yours, hoping you will not have to trust your own appetite. It shows up when you send a text message and then immediately regret it. You reread what you wrote, analyzing every word, every punctuation mark, wondering if you sounded too eager or too distant, too casual or too formal. You wait for the response with a knot in your stomach, and when it comes, you dissect it for hidden meaning, for signs that you said the wrong thing, that you revealed too much or not enough. You replay conversations for days. You lie awake at night, running through what you said, what they said, what you should have said instead. You construct alternate versions of reality, where you were wittier, clearer, more confident, where you did not stumble over your words or laugh too loud or agree to something you did not want, because you agree to things you do not want all the time. You say yes when you mean no. You go to events that drain you. You take on projects that overwhelm you. You stay in conversations that bore you. Not because you lack boundaries, but because someone else seemed certain and you were not. Because their desire felt more valid than your hesitation. Because saying no would require you to trust that your reluctance matters, that your instincts are worth honoring, that you do not need a justified reason to decline, and you do not trust that. So you say yes, and then you resent yourself for it. This resentment builds slowly, quietly, until one day you realize you are living a life that feels more like a compromise than a choice. You are in a job you did not really want, but took because everyone said it was a good opportunity. You are in a relationship you stayed in longer than you should have, because you were not sure if your doubts were valid or just fear. You are surrounded by people who feel more like obligations than connections, because you never trusted yourself enough to walk away. You watch other people move forward. You watch them make decisions with ease, with confidence, with a kind of internal clarity that feels foreign to you. They quit jobs. They end relationships. They move across the country, start businesses, change directions without agonizing over every possible outcome. And you wonder what they have that you do not. You wonder if they are smarter, braver, more capable. You wonder if they know something you haven't learned yet, some secret to certainty that has eluded you. But it is not that they know more. It is that they trust themselves more. They trust themselves enough to make a choice without needing it to be perfect. They trust themselves enough to handle the consequences, whatever they may be. They trust themselves enough to change their minds if something does not work out, to pivot, to adjust, to learn and move forward without collapsing into self-blame. You do not have that trust, and without it, you are stuck. You are stuck in jobs that no longer serve you because leaving feels too risky, too uncertain, too dependent on your own judgment. You are stuck in relationships that have run their course because you cannot tell if your dissatisfaction is legitimate or if you are just being difficult, just expecting too much, just incapable of being satisfied. You are stuck in patterns of overthinking and over-explaining, trying to justify your choices to yourself and everyone around you, hoping that if you can articulate your reasoning well enough, if you can gather enough evidence, if you can convince others that you are making the right call, then maybe you will believe it too. But it does not work that way, because the doubt is not rational. It is not something you can logic your way out of. It is deeper than that, more primal, rooted in a fractured relationship with your own inner knowing. And this fracture costs you more than time and energy. It costs you your sense of self. You become someone who does not know what they want. Someone who cannot answer simple questions like, "What do you feel like eating?" or "What do you want to do this weekend?" without anxiety. Someone who defers, deflects, asks others to choose because choosing feels too heavy, too fraught with the possibility of being wrong. You lose track of your own preferences. You forget what you used to enjoy before you started filtering everything through the lens of what others might think, what others might expect, what others might approve of. You cannot remember the last time you did something just because you wanted to, without seeking validation, without second-guessing, without wondering if you should want something different. Your identity becomes blurry, undefined, a reflection of everyone else's opinions rather than a clear sense of who you are and what you stand for. You become adaptable to the point of disappearance, shifting to match the expectations of whoever is in front of you, losing coherence, losing substance, losing the through line that makes you you. And the worst part is that you know this is happening. You are not oblivious. You see it. You feel it. You recognize the pattern even as you repeat it, day after day, choice after choice, moment after moment, where you choose safety over truth, consensus over conviction, external validation over internal knowing. You see other versions of yourself in your mind. The person you could have been if you had trusted yourself 5 years ago, 10 years ago, at that pivotal moment when you stood at a crossroads and chose the path that felt safer instead of the one that felt right. You wonder about that parallel life, the one where you said no when you wanted to say no, where you left when you knew it was time to leave, where you pursued what called to you instead of what seemed practical. But you cannot go back. You can only move forward. And moving forward requires the very thing you do not have, trust in your own ability to navigate what comes next. So you stay stuck. You stay small. You stay in the endless loop of checking and rechecking, of asking and asking again, of searching outside yourself for the certainty that will never come because certainty is not something someone else can give you. This is the cost of constant doubt. This is what it takes from you. It takes your time, hours spent deliberating over decisions that do not matter, days spent recovering from choices you regret, years spent waiting for permission that never arrives. It takes your energy, the mental exhaustion of overthinking, the emotional toll of never feeling sure, the physical tension of living in a state of perpetual, low-grade anxiety. It takes your relationships, because people grow tired of being consulted for every small decision, because intimacy requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires trust, and you do not trust yourself enough to be seen fully, because you cannot show up as a whole person when you are constantly fragmented by doubt. It takes your opportunities, because you hesitate too long and the moment passes, because you talk yourself out of things before you even try, because you wait for perfect clarity, and perfect clarity never comes. And it takes your joy, because joy requires presence, and you cannot be present when you are constantly second-guessing, because joy requires spontaneity, and you cannot be spontaneous when every choice feels like a referendum on your worth. Because joy requires trust, in the moment, in yourself, in the belief that you will be okay no matter what happens. You are not okay right now. Not really. You are functional, perhaps. You are getting by. But you are not okay in the way that matters, in the way that allows you to move through the world with ease and confidence and a sense of inner solidity. You are living as a stranger to yourself, and that estrangement is costing you everything. But here is what you need to know. You are not alone in this. You are not the only person who struggles this way. You are not uniquely broken or fundamentally flawed. This pattern of doubt, this erosion of self-trust, this constant deferral to external voices, it is common. It is understandable. It is a response to real experiences, real conditioning, real environments that taught you not to trust yourself. And it has a shape. It has a name. It has a reason. The doubt you feel is not random. It did not appear out of nowhere. It was learned. It was reinforced. It was built brick by brick, choice by choice, moment by moment, until it became the foundation you stand on. Shaky, unstable, unreliable, but familiar enough that you do not know how to build anything else. But you can build something else. You can learn to trust yourself again. Not perfectly, not without effort, but truly, deeply, in a way that changes everything. You can learn to make decisions without agonizing. You can learn to choose without needing consensus. You can learn to move forward, even when you are not certain, even when others disagree, even when the path ahead is unclear. You can reclaim the voice you have been ignoring. You can come home to yourself. But first, you have to see the cost clearly. You have to look at what this doubt has taken from you, what it continues to take, what it will keep taking if nothing changes. This is that moment. This is where you stop pretending it is fine, where you stop minimizing the struggle, where you acknowledge the weight of living this way. It is heavy. It is exhausting. It is unsustainable. And you deserve something different. You deserve something different. And to build something different, you need to understand how this pattern began. Because the doubt you carry now, the erosion of self-trust that shapes your every decision, it did not start with you. It was taught to you, carefully, systematically, over years and years of conditioning that you were too young, too vulnerable, too dependent to recognize or resist. You learned not to trust yourself, and like all learning, it began early. It began in childhood, in moments so small you may not even remember them. It began when you said you were not hungry, and an adult insisted you finish your plate anyway. When you said you were cold, and someone told you that you were not. When you expressed fear and were told there was nothing to be afraid of. When you said something hurt, and were told it did not hurt that much. These moments seem insignificant, harmless even, but they planted a seed. They taught you that your internal experience could not be trusted, that what you felt, what you sensed, what you knew in your body was less reliable than what someone else told you was true. And the lesson repeated, again and again, in 1,000 small ways. You wanted to play and were told to sit still. You wanted to rest and were told to keep going. You wanted to explore and were told it was too dangerous. You wanted to create and were told you were doing it wrong. You wanted to express yourself and were told you were too loud, too much, too intense, too sensitive. You learned that your desires were inconvenient, that your instincts were unreliable, that your knowing could not be trusted because it conflicted with what the adults around you needed you to be. And children cannot survive without adults. So you adapted. You learned to override your own signals. You learned to look outward for guidance instead of inward for truth. You learned to ask permission before acting, to seek approval before choosing, to check with someone else before trusting your own perception of reality. This was not your fault. You were doing what children do, learning to navigate the world, learning to stay safe, learning to belong. You could not have known that in learning to please others, you were unlearning how to trust yourself. But some of you learned this lesson more harshly than others. Some of you grew up in homes where mistakes were not tolerated, where perfection was expected, where any deviation from the prescribed path was met with criticism, punishment, or withdrawal of love. You learned that getting it wrong was dangerous, that trusting your own judgment and being incorrect could result in shame, rejection, or harm. So you stopped trusting your judgment. You started checking, constantly, with everyone, because the cost of being wrong felt too high to risk. Some of you learned this lesson through betrayal. Someone you trusted hurt you. Someone you loved lied to you. Someone you believed in let you down in a way that shattered your sense of safety. And if you could not trust them, someone you chose, someone you let in, then how could you trust your own ability to discern who is safe and who is not? How could you trust your instincts when your instincts led you into harm? So you stopped trusting your instincts. You started second-guessing. You started looking for red flags in everyone, or ignoring red flags entirely because you no longer believed you could read them accurately. Your internal compass, once clear, became scrambled, unreliable, a source of danger rather than guidance. And some of you learned this lesson from systems, from schools that rewarded compliance and punished creativity, from workplaces that valued obedience over innovation, from cultures that demanded conformity and shamed difference. You learned that fitting in was safer than standing out, that following the rules was smarter than trusting your own sense of what was right, that success came not from listening to yourself, but from listening to authority. So you learned to distrust deviation. You learned to fear the consequences of going your own way. You learned that self-trust was a luxury you could not afford if you wanted to survive, to succeed, to be accepted. And now, years later, you are still living with these lessons. They are wired into you, encoded in your nervous system, reinforced by a lifetime of repetition. But here is what you need to understand. This is not happening in your mind alone. This is happening in your brain, and your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Your brain is a prediction machine. It takes in information from the world and from your body, and it generates predictions about what will happen next. It does this to keep you safe, to help you navigate, to allow you to respond quickly without having to consciously analyze every situation. But your brain builds its predictions based on past experience. And if your past experience taught you that trusting yourself leads to criticism, punishment, shame, or danger, then your brain will predict that trusting yourself now will lead to those outcomes again. This is why self-doubt feels so visceral. It is not just a thought. It is a full-body alarm system activated by the part of your brain called the amygdala. The amygdala is your threat detector. It scans for danger. And if it has learned that self-trust equals threat, it will fire every time you try to trust yourself. It will flood your body with anxiety, with tension, with the overwhelming urge to check with someone else, to seek reassurance, to avoid the perceived danger of making your own choice. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thought, planning, and decision-making, gets hijacked. When the amygdala is activated, the prefrontal cortex goes offline. You lose access to your executive function. You cannot think clearly. You cannot weigh options calmly. You cannot trust your reasoning because your reasoning has been temporarily disabled by a nervous system that believes you are under threat. This is why doubt feels so paralyzing. This is why you freeze in the grocery aisle. Why you rewrite text messages 20 times. Why you cannot make a simple decision without spiraling. Your brain is not malfunctioning. It is protecting you based on outdated information, based on lessons learned in childhood, based on a model of the world that no longer serves you, but has not yet been updated. And chronic stress makes this worse. When you live in a state of constant low-grade anxiety, when you are always on edge, always bracing for the next mistake, always waiting for the other shoe to drop, your brain adapts. The hippocampus, the part of your brain involved in memory and context, shrinks. Your ability to distinguish between past and present becomes impaired. Your ability to assess situations accurately diminishes. You start to perceive threat everywhere, even in moments that are objectively safe. You become hypervigilant. You become reactive. You lose the capacity to pause, to reflect, to choose consciously. Instead, you operate on autopilot, driven by fear, by old patterns, by a nervous system that is stuck in survival mode. And here is the cruel irony. The more you distrust yourself, the more evidence you create that you cannot be trusted. Because when you are operating from fear, when your prefrontal cortex is offline, when your decisions are driven by anxiety rather than clarity, you do make mistakes. You do choose poorly. You do say yes when you mean no, stay when you should leave, ignore your instincts when they are trying to protect you. And then you blame yourself. You take those mistakes as proof that you were right not to trust yourself, that your instincts are broken, that you need someone else to guide you. You do not see the system at work. You do not see that the lack of self-trust is what created the conditions for the mistake in the first place. This is the loop. This is how the pattern perpetuates. But it is not just your personal history that keeps you trapped here. It is also the world you live in, because the world you live in benefits from your self-doubt. Consumer culture thrives on your uncertainty. Advertising is designed to make you feel inadequate, incomplete, unsure of yourself, so that you will buy the product that promises to fix you. Social media thrives on your need for external validation. Every like, every comment, every share is a hit of reassurance that you are doing it right, that you are acceptable, that you are enough, and the algorithms are designed to keep you coming back, keep you checking, keep you dependent on that external feedback loop. Political systems benefit from your self-doubt. When you do not trust yourself, you are easier to influence, easier to control, easier to convince that someone else knows better than you do what you need, what you should want, what is good for you. When you do not trust yourself, you look to authority figures to tell you what to think, what to believe, what to fear. You become a follower instead of a sovereign individual. Educational systems benefit from your self-doubt. When you do not trust your own curiosity, your own questions, your own way of learning, you stay in line. You follow the curriculum. You do not challenge. You do not deviate. You become a compliant participant in a system that was never designed to honor your unique intelligence or your individual path. Even relationships can benefit from your self-doubt. When you do not trust yourself, you are easier to manipulate, easier to gaslight, easier to convince that your perception is wrong, that your feelings are invalid, that you are the problem. You stay in situations that do not serve you because you cannot trust your own assessment of what is happening. This is not a conspiracy. This is simply the way power operates. Systems that depend on conformity, on obedience, on consumption, on control. They do not want you to trust yourself. They want you to trust them. And they are very, very good at making that happen. But here is the shift. Here is the moment where everything changes. This is not your fault. You were trained into this. You were conditioned, shaped, molded by forces you did not choose and could not resist. You internalized the voices of authority because you had to. You learned to override your instincts because the alternative felt too dangerous. You adapted to survive, to belong, to be loved. And that adaptation was smart. It was necessary. It kept you safe in an environment where self-trust might have been punished, where deviation might have been dangerous, where listening to yourself might have cost you connection, approval, or survival. But you are not in that environment anymore. You are not a child who needs permission to exist. You are not dependent on the approval of people who do not see you clearly. You are not trapped in systems that demand your compliance. You are here, now, in this moment, with the capacity to choose differently, and what was learned can be unlearned. Neural pathways that were carved by repetition can be reshaped by new repetition. Beliefs that were formed in childhood can be examined, questioned, and replaced. Patterns that were adaptive once can be recognized as outdated and released. Your brain is plastic. It can change. It is changing right now as you read these words, as you begin to see your doubt not as a personal failing, but as a pattern with a history, a logic, a source. The shame you have carried does not belong to you. The belief that you are broken, that you are uniquely incapable, that you will never be able to trust yourself. That belief is not true. It is a story you were told, a conclusion you drew from incomplete information, a prediction your brain made based on a past that no longer defines your present. You are not broken. You are operating exactly as you were trained to operate. And now you can train yourself differently. This does not mean the process will be easy. It does not mean the doubt will disappear overnight. But it does mean that change is possible. It does mean that you are not stuck here forever. The doubt you feel is not a life sentence. It is a pattern. And patterns can be interrupted. Patterns can be interrupted. But to interrupt a pattern, you need to understand where you are within it. You need a map, a framework, a way to see the terrain you are crossing so that you can recognize progress, even when it feels like you are still lost. What follows is not a test. It is not a judgment. It is simply a way to orient yourself within the journey from dependence to sovereignty, from external reliance to deep self-trust. These stages are not rigid. You may find yourself moving between them, circling back, spending years in one and days in another. Growth is not linear, but it is knowable, and knowing where you are makes it easier to take the next step. There are 4 stages, and you are somewhere within them right now. Stage 1 is external reliance. This is where you look outside yourself for every answer. You cannot make a decision without consensus. You cannot move forward without approval. You feel safest when someone else tells you what to do, when the path is clear, when the choice has been validated by someone you trust more than you trust yourself. In this stage, you are constantly checking. You ask your partner what they think. You poll your friends. You read reviews, scroll forums, consult experts, not because you lack information, but because you lack confidence in your own ability to interpret that information. You need someone else to confirm that you are seeing things correctly, that your reasoning is sound, that your choice is acceptable. You feel safest in consensus, when everyone agrees, when the path is well worn, when you are following advice that has worked for others, you can move forward. But when opinions conflict, when the advice is mixed, when no one can tell you definitively what to do, you freeze. You cannot choose. You wait. You delay. You hope that if you gather enough input, eventually clarity will emerge from outside of you. You defer to authority, to experts, to people who seem more certain than you feel. You assume they know better, that their confidence is evidence of correctness, that if they are sure, then you can be sure too, as long as you follow their lead. In relationships, you adapt. You become what others need you to be. You agree with their preferences because disagreeing feels too risky, too exposing, too likely to reveal that you do not know what you want. You let others plan, decide, initiate. You go along. You say yes. You follow. At work, you wait for instructions. You seek approval before acting. You need your choices to be validated by a manager, a colleague, a precedent. You do not trust your own judgment enough to deviate from the norm, to try something new, to make a call without checking first. This stage feels safe. It feels necessary. It feels like the only way to avoid catastrophic mistakes. But it also feels exhausting, limiting, suffocating. You sense, on some level, that you are not fully present in your own life, that you are living by committee, that the person making your choices is not really you. It is an amalgamation of everyone else's opinions, filtered through your anxiety and shaped by your need for approval. But you do not yet know how to live any other way. So you stay here, and the longer you stay, the more evidence you accumulate that this is who you are. Someone who cannot be trusted. Someone who needs guidance. Someone who will always need someone else to lead. Until something shifts. Until you move into stage 2. Stage 2 is questioning awareness. This is where you begin to notice the pattern. You catch yourself mid-spiral, mid-doubt, mid-check. You see it happening. You watch yourself reach for your phone to ask someone's opinion about something you already know. You hear yourself deferring, agreeing, adapting. And for the first time, you recognize it as a pattern rather than just the way things are. This stage is marked by discomfort, by the growing realization that the safety you have been seeking in external validation is not actually making you feel safe. It is making you feel dependent, anxious, trapped in a loop that never resolves because no amount of external reassurance can fill the gap left by your own missing trust. You start to notice the cost. You see how much time you lose to overthinking. You feel the resentment building when you say yes to things you do not want. You recognize the exhaustion that comes from constantly performing, constantly adapting, constantly checking to see if you are doing it right. You start to wonder if there might be another way. You see other people making decisions with ease, and instead of assuming they are fundamentally different from you, you start to ask, what do they have that I do not? And the answer begins to surface. They trust themselves. Not perfectly, not without doubt, but enough. Enough to choose. Enough to move forward. Enough to live. In this stage, you are not yet trusting yourself, but you are aware that you do not. And awareness is the first step toward change. You begin to experiment. Tentatively. Carefully. You make a small decision without asking anyone. You choose what to eat without polling your friends. You pick a movie without checking reviews. You send a text without rewriting it 5 times. And you notice what happens. You notice that the world does not end. You notice that you survive. You notice that even if the choice was not perfect, it was good enough. This stage is uncomfortable because you are in the gap between the old way and the new way. You are aware of the pattern, but not yet free of it. You catch yourself mid-check and then check anyway, because the pull is too strong, the anxiety too loud. You want to trust yourself, but you do not yet know how. So you oscillate. You move between awareness and autopilot, between intention and habit, between small moments of self-trust and long stretches of old conditioning. But you are moving. You are shifting. And even though it feels shaky, even though it feels uncertain, you are beginning to see that change is possible, that you are not condemned to live this way forever, that the voice you have been ignoring is still there, waiting, ready to be heard. And then, slowly, you move into stage 3. Stage 3 is tentative self-trust. This is where you begin to make decisions without asking for permission. Not always. Not easily. but regularly enough that it starts to feel like a practice rather than an accident. You make small choices on your own. You trust your preferences. You honor your instincts, even when they conflict with what others think you should do. You sit with discomfort instead of immediately seeking reassurance. You let yourself want something without needing someone else to validate that wanting. This stage is marked by practice, by repetition, by the deliberate choice to turn inward before turning outward. You pause before asking for advice. You check in with yourself first. You ask, what do I think? What do I feel? What do I already know? And sometimes you find that you do know, that the answer is there, underneath the noise, underneath the anxiety, underneath the habit of deferring. You find that your instincts are not absent, they are just quiet, and they need space to speak. So you create that space. You practice listening. You practice choosing. You practice tolerating the discomfort of uncertainty without collapsing into the need for external validation. This does not mean you stop seeking advice. It means you stop needing it to function. You can ask for input without surrendering your agency. You can hear someone's perspective without abandoning your own. You can take what resonates and leave what does not, trusting yourself to discern the difference. In this stage, mistakes happen. You make choices that do not work out. You trust yourself and get it wrong. And this is where the real work begins, because the test is not whether you are always right. The test is whether you can be wrong without using that wrongness as evidence that you should never have trusted yourself in the first place. You learn to separate outcome from process. You learn that a bad result does not mean your instincts are broken. It means you are human. It means you are learning. It means you made the best choice you could with the information you had. And now you have more information, and you can adjust. You develop self-compassion. You stop punishing yourself for imperfection. You stop treating every mistake as proof of your inadequacy. You start to see mistakes as data, as feedback, as part of the process of becoming someone who trusts themselves, not because they are infallible, but because they know they can handle whatever comes. This stage feels shaky. It feels vulnerable. It feels like walking on new ground, testing each step, unsure if it will hold. But it does hold, and the more you walk, the steadier you become. You start to notice a shift in your relationships. You stop adapting reflexively. You start expressing preferences. You start saying no without over-explaining. You start showing up as yourself, trusting that the people who are meant to stay will stay, and the people who were only there because you were easy will leave. And that is okay, because you are no longer interested in being easy. You are interested in being real. You start to notice a shift at work. You make decisions without waiting for permission. You trust your expertise. You contribute ideas without hedging, without disclaiming, without apologizing for taking up space. You still seek feedback, but you do not crumble when it is critical. You take what is useful and release what is not. This stage is not about perfection. It is about progress. It is about building evidence, choice by choice, that you can trust yourself, that your instincts are not random, that your knowing is valid, that you are capable of navigating your own life. And over time, with practice, with repetition, with the accumulation of small moments of self-trust, you begin to move into stage 4. Stage 4 is deep self-trust. This is where you know yourself, not in a fixed, rigid way, but in a fluid, grounded way. You know what matters to you. You know what feels true. You know when something is aligned and when it is not. and you act from that knowing with clarity and conviction. This does not mean you are never uncertain. It means you trust your ability to navigate uncertainty. You do not need certainty to move forward. You do not need everyone to agree. You do not need to know the outcome in advance. You trust that you will handle whatever comes, that you will adapt, adjust, learn, grow, that you are resourceful enough, resilient enough, capable enough to figure it out as you go. In this stage, self-trust is not something you are building. It is something you are living. It is the foundation you stand on. It is the way you move through the world. You seek advice when it is useful. When you genuinely want another perspective, when someone has expertise you do not, when collaboration will make the outcome better. But you do not need advice to function. You do not need permission to choose. You do not need validation to know what is right for you. You have come home to yourself. And from that place, everything is different. You make decisions with ease, not because they are easy, but because you trust yourself to handle complexity. You honor your boundaries without guilt. You say yes when you mean yes, and no when you mean no. You do not perform for approval. You do not adapt to fit. You show up as you are, trusting that your presence is enough. You are not waiting for someone to tell you what to do. You are not waiting for perfect clarity. You are not waiting at all. You are living, choosing, moving, trusting yourself enough to take the next step, and the next, and the next. This is where the journey leads. Not to perfection, not to the absence of doubt, but to a relationship with yourself that is strong enough to hold you through whatever comes, to a trust that is earned, practiced, lived, to a knowing that you are enough, that you always have been, that the voice you were searching for was never outside of you. It was always here. It was always here. And now you need a way to reach it, a method, a practice, something concrete and repeatable that allows you to access your own knowing, to distinguish it from the noise, to hear the voice that has been whispering beneath the doubt. This is not mystical. This is not about channeling some higher wisdom or waiting for divine intervention. This is about learning to listen to the intelligence that already exists within you, the intelligence of your body, your instincts, your accumulated experience, the intelligence that knows things before your rational mind catches up, the intelligence you have been trained to ignore. What follows is a practice, a tool, a way to tune into your inner compass and trust what it tells you. It has 3 steps, and it works, not because it is magic, but because it interrupts the pattern you have been running for years. It gives you a way to pause, to check in, to choose consciously instead of reactively. You can use this practice for any decision, small or large, simple or complex, whether you are standing in a grocery aisle or standing at a crossroads that will shape the rest of your life. The process is the same. Step 1 is pause and ground. Before you make any decision, before you reach for your phone to ask someone's opinion, before you spiral into analysis and overthinking, stop. Just stop. Interrupt the automatic reflex that pulls you outward, that sends you searching for certainty in someone else's voice. Breathe. Slowly. Deeply. Feel the air moving into your lungs and back out again. Notice your body. Where are you holding tension? Is your jaw clenched? Are your shoulders tight? Is your stomach in knots? Just notice. You do not need to fix it. You just need to become aware of it. This pause is critical because when you are moving fast, when you are anxious, when you are caught in the momentum of doubt, you cannot hear yourself. Your nervous system is too activated. Your prefrontal cortex is offline. Your thoughts are spinning too quickly to land on anything solid. But when you pause, when you ground, when you bring your awareness back into your body, something shifts. The spiral slows, the noise quiets. You create space, and in that space, your inner knowing has room to emerge. This does not take long. 30 seconds, a minute. Just enough time to feel your feet on the ground, to notice your breath, to come back into your body instead of being lost in your head. And then you move to step 2. Ask the right question. This is where most people go wrong. They ask, what should I do? What is the right choice? What will other people think? What if I am wrong? These questions pull you outward. They assume the answer is somewhere else, in some external standard of correctness, in some consensus you have not yet found. But the question you need to ask is different. The question is, what do I already know? Not what do I think? Not what does logic dictate? Not what would someone else do? But what do I already know? What feels true here, beneath the noise, beneath the fear, beneath the conditioning? You can also ask, what does my body know? What am I sensing? What is the quiet voice underneath the loud one saying? These questions orient you inward. They assume that the answer is already present, that you do not need to search for it, that you just need to listen. And then you listen, without judgment, without rushing, without dismissing what arises just because it does not match what you think you should feel. The answer may not come in words. It may come as a sensation, a tightness in your chest that says no, an expansion in your belly that says yes, a heaviness that says this is not aligned, a lightness that says this is right. It may come as an image, a flash of something that feels true, even if you do not yet understand why. It may come as a quiet certainty, a knowing that sits beneath the anxiety, calm and steady, waiting for you to notice it. Or it may not come at all, and that is okay too. Sometimes the answer is, I do not know yet, and that is information. That is your inner compass telling you that you need more time, more space, more clarity before you choose. The key is to listen without forcing, to create space for your knowing to emerge without demanding that it show up in a particular form or on a particular timeline. This takes practice, because you are not used to listening this way. You are used to thinking your way to answers, to analyzing and weighing and deliberating. But thinking is not the same as knowing. Thinking is a tool. Knowing is deeper. It is pre-verbal. It is embodied. It is the place where all your experience, all your wisdom, all your instincts converge into something that feels true. You will doubt it at first. You will hear the answer and immediately question it. You will think, but what if I am wrong? What if this is just fear? What if I am making it up? And here is what you need to understand. Fear has a different quality than knowing. Fear is loud, urgent, insistent. It catastrophizes, it spirals. It tells you that everything will fall apart if you choose wrong. Knowing is quiet, steady. It does not shout. It does not demand. It simply sits there, waiting for you to notice it. It feels calm, even when the choice is difficult. It feels clear, even when the outcome is uncertain. Learning to tell the difference takes time. It takes practice. It takes a willingness to be wrong sometimes, to trust your knowing and discover that it was actually fear in disguise, and to learn from that without abandoning the process entirely. Which brings us to step 3. Act small and observe. You do not need to make a huge, irreversible decision based on what your inner compass tells you. You do not need to quit your job, end your relationship, Move across the country based on one moment of listening. You just need to take one small action, one step in the direction your knowing points. And then you observe. You pay attention. You notice what happens. Did it feel aligned? Did it feel true as you moved through it? Or did it feel off, forced, like you were pushing against something? Did the world collapse? Did catastrophe strike? Or did you survive? Did things unfold in a way you could handle? This is how you build evidence. This is how you train your brain to trust your instincts. Not by taking giant leaps of faith, but by taking small, testable steps. By creating a feedback loop where you listen, you act, you observe, and you learn. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. Imagine you are in a relationship that feels off. You cannot name what is wrong, but something does not feel right. You have ignored this feeling for months, maybe years. You have told yourself you are being too picky, too demanding, that all relationships have rough patches, that you should be grateful for what you have. But the feeling persists. And now you want to know, is this instinct or is this fear? So you pause, you ground, you feel your body. You notice the tightness in your chest when you think about coming home to this person. You notice the way your energy dims around them, the way you edit yourself, the way you feel smaller instead of more alive. You ask the question, what do I already know? And the answer comes, quiet but clear. This is not right. This is not where I am meant to be. But you are not ready to end it. Not yet. So you act small. You create space. You say no to plans one evening and spend time alone instead. You notice how you feel in that solitude. Relieved, guilty, expansive, anxious. You observe. You pay attention. You gather data. And over time, as you continue to listen, as you continue to act small, as you continue to observe, the knowing becomes clearer. The path becomes more obvious. And when the time comes to make the bigger choice, you are ready. Not because you have certainty, but because you have built trust. Trust in your ability to hear yourself. Trust in your ability to act on what you hear. Trust in your ability to handle whatever comes next. Or imagine you have 2 job offers. One pays more. One feels more aligned with what you care about. Everyone is telling you to take the higher paying job. It makes sense. It is the logical choice. But something in you hesitates. So you pause. You ground. You feel your body. You notice the tension when you imagine yourself in the higher paying job. The way your breath shortens. The way your energy contracts. You ask the question, what do I already know? And the answer comes, the money will not be worth it. I will be miserable. I already know this. But the doubt is loud. The external voices are loud. So you act small. You imagine a day in each job. You walk through it in your mind. You notice how you feel. Which one makes you feel alive? Which one makes you feel like you are compromising something essential? You observe. You gather evidence. You build trust. And then you choose. Not because someone told you to. Not because it makes sense on paper. But because you listened to yourself. Because you trusted what you knew. This practice works in moments of calm and in moments of crisis. It works when you are setting a boundary with a friend, when you are deciding whether to have a difficult conversation, when you are choosing how to spend your time, your energy, your life. It works because it is simple, because it does not require you to be perfect, because it meets you where you are and helps you take the next step, whatever that step may be. But here is what you need to remember. This is not about being right every time. This is not about developing infallible instincts that never lead you astray. This is about building a relationship with your own inner voice, a relationship that deepens over time, that strengthens with practice, that becomes the foundation you stand on when everything else is uncertain. You will make mistakes. You will trust yourself and choose wrong. You will act on your knowing and discover that your knowing was incomplete, that you missed something, that the outcome was not what you hoped. And that is okay, because the goal is not perfection. The goal is connection, connection to yourself, connection to the intelligence that lives in your body, in your instincts, in the accumulated wisdom of your lived experience. Every time you pause, every time you ask the right question, every time you act small and observe, you are strengthening that connection. You are building the muscle of self-trust. You are proving to yourself, one choice at a time, that you are capable, that your instincts are worth listening to, that you do not need someone else to tell you what to do. This is the core practice. This is the tool. Everything else builds on this. Everything else builds on this. But a foundation alone is not enough. You need reinforcements, supporting structures, tools that deepen the practice and help you navigate the complexity of real life, where decisions are rarely clear-cut, and doubt does not simply vanish because you have learned to pause and listen. What follows are 5 tools, 5 practices that work alongside the inner compass to strengthen your relationship with yourself, to rewire old patterns, to give you multiple pathways back to your own knowing when the noise gets loud or the stakes get high. You do not need to use all of them at once. You do not need to master them overnight. Integrate them gradually. Try one. See how it feels. Let it become familiar before you add another. This is not a race. This is a process of deepening, of building trust layer by layer, choice by choice, moment by moment. The first tool is the evidence journal. This is simple but powerful. Keep a record of times you trusted yourself and it worked out. Write them down. Not in your head, where they can be dismissed or forgotten. On paper. In a document. Somewhere you can return to when doubt is loud and you need proof that your instincts are trustworthy. Your brain has a negativity bias. It is wired to remember mistakes, threats, failures. This was useful when survival depended on avoiding predators and learning from danger. But now it means that you remember every time you got it wrong and forget most of the times you got it right. You remember the job you should not have taken, the relationship you stayed in too long, the decision you regret, and you use those memories as evidence that you cannot be trusted. The evidence journal counters this. It trains your brain to notice and remember the times your instincts were accurate, the times you trusted yourself, and it worked, the times you listened to that quiet voice, and it led you somewhere good. Start small. Write down the moment you chose the meal you actually wanted, and it was delicious. The moment you said no to plans, and spent the evening in a way that restored you. The moment you trusted your discomfort about someone, and later discovered you were right to be cautious. The moment you took a risk based on your knowing, and it opened a door you did not expect. These moments add up. They accumulate. And when you are standing at a crossroads, when doubt is screaming and you cannot remember ever making a good choice, you can open this journal and see the evidence. You can remind yourself, I have done this before. I have trusted myself before. And it has worked. This is not about toxic positivity. This is not about pretending mistakes do not happen. This is about balance. about giving your brain access to the full picture instead of just the failures, about building self-credibility through the slow accumulation of proof that you are more capable, more intuitive, more trustworthy than your doubt tells you. Write in it regularly. Not every day necessarily, but often enough that it becomes a practice, often enough that you start to notice the moments worth recording, often enough that your brain begins to shift, begins to see that trusting yourself is not a gamble, but a skill you are actively developing. The second tool is the doubt dialogue. When self-doubt arises, and it will arise, even as you strengthen your self-trust, do not try to suppress it. Do not tell it to go away. Do not shame yourself for feeling it. Instead, speak to it directly. Ask, what are you afraid of? Doubt is not your enemy. Doubt is a part of you that is trying to protect you. It learned, a long time ago, that trusting yourself could be dangerous, that making the wrong choice could lead to pain, rejection, criticism, harm, and so it developed a strategy. Check everything. Question everything. Do not move forward until you are certain. Keep you safe by keeping you stuck. But doubt does not need to be in charge. It just needs to be heard. So when it shows up, when it tells you that you cannot trust yourself, when it insists that you need to check with someone else before you choose, pause. Acknowledge it. Say, out loud or in your mind, I hear you. I know you are trying to protect me. What are you afraid will happen if I trust myself here? And then listen, not to argue, not to dismiss, just to understand. Sometimes the answer is, I am afraid you will make a mistake and people will judge you. I am afraid you will choose wrong and regret it. I am afraid you will be alone if you stop seeking approval. These fears are old. They come from past wounds, past environments, past versions of yourself who didn't yet have the tools you have now, but they are real. And acknowledging them softens their grip. You can respond with compassion. You can say, I understand, that makes sense. I was hurt before, but I am not in that situation anymore. I have learned. I have grown. I can handle this. Or you can say, I hear you, and I am going to try this anyway. Not because you are wrong, but because I need to practice trusting myself. And I need you to trust me too. This dialogue is not about making doubt disappear. It is about changing your relationship with it, about moving from being controlled by doubt to being in conversation with it, about recognizing that doubt is not the voice of truth, it is the voice of fear, and fear can inform you without dictating to you. The third tool is the trusted counsel. You do not need to stop seeking input from others. You just need to change how you use that input. And the first step is to be intentional about who you ask. Identify a small group of people whose perspectives you genuinely value, not because they always agree with you, not because they tell you what you want to hear, but because they see you clearly, because they reflect back what they hear without imposing their own agenda, because they trust you to know yourself, even when you do not yet trust yourself. This is not a large group, 3 to 5 people maybe, people who know you well, people who have earned your trust over time, people whose values align with yours, whose judgment you respect, whose presence makes you feel more like yourself, not less. And here is the key. Use them as mirrors, not authorities. When you go to them with a decision, do not ask, what should I do? Ask, what do you hear me saying? What are you noticing? What am I missing? Ask them to reflect back the patterns they see, the themes that emerge, the things you keep circling back to. Ask them to help you see yourself more clearly, not to tell you what choice to make. This shifts the dynamic. It keeps the decision in your hands. It also allows you to benefit from their perspective without surrendering your agency. You are not asking them to know you better than you know yourself. You are asking them to help you access what you already know but cannot yet see. And sometimes you will find that just speaking your thoughts out loud, just hearing yourself articulate what you are feeling, is enough. You do not need their answer. You need the space to hear your own. The fourth tool is the somatic check-in. Your body knows before your mind does. It registers threat, alignment, discomfort, resonance at a level that is pre-conscious, pre-verbal. But most of the time, you are not paying attention. You are in your head, thinking, analyzing, trying to reason your way to clarity. Meanwhile, your body is sending signals that you are not receiving. The somatic check-in teaches you to read those signals, to become fluent in the language your body speaks, to use it as a source of information, not just a vessel that carries your brain around. Start by noticing sensations. When you are considering a decision, when you are in a situation that requires discernment, pause and scan your body. Where do you feel tension? Where do you feel ease? Is your chest tight? Is your stomach relaxed? Are your shoulders up around your ears or soft and open? Different sensations mean different things, and the meanings are personal. You have to learn your own body's language. But there are some common patterns: tightness in the chest, shallow breathing, a clenched jaw. These often signal fear, resistance, misalignment. Your body is saying, something is not right here. Pay attention. Expansion in the belly, a sense of openness, a softening in the shoulders. These often signal alignment, resonance, a yes. Your body is saying, this feels true. This feels right. Heaviness, fatigue, a sinking feeling. These might signal that something is draining you, that you are moving against your own energy, that this is not sustainable. Lightness, energy, a sense of lift. These might signal excitement, alignment, a path that feels alive. But again, these are not universal. Your body may speak differently. The key is to pay attention, to notice, to gather data over time about what your sensations mean for you, and then to trust them, to let them inform your choices, not as the only source of information, but as a valid one, as trustworthy as any logical analysis, any external advice, any rational pro and con list. Your body is not irrational. It is intelligent. It processes information faster than your conscious mind can. It integrates signals from your environment, your history, your nervous system, and delivers a verdict in the form of sensation. Learning to read that verdict is one of the most powerful tools you have. The fifth tool is the permission ritual. One of the reasons you struggle to trust yourself is that you have been trained to seek permission, to wait for approval, to check with someone else before you allow yourself to want something, to do something, to be something. The permission ritual trains you to give yourself permission, to practice autonomy, to reclaim your right to choose without needing external validation. Start small, ridiculously small. Give yourself permission to rest when you are tired, even if there are things left undone. Give yourself permission to eat what you actually want, not what you think you should want. Give yourself permission to say no to an invitation without explaining why. Give yourself permission to want something different than you wanted yesterday. Make it a ritual. Say it out loud if you can. I give myself permission to rest. I give myself permission to change my mind. I give myself permission to take up space. This might feel strange at first, unnecessary, even performative, but it works, because it interrupts the pattern of waiting. It shifts the authority from outside to inside. It reminds you that you do not need anyone else's approval to live your life. And as you practice with small things, you can expand to bigger ones. I give myself permission to leave this job. I give myself permission to end this relationship. I give myself permission to pursue what I actually want, even if it does not make sense to anyone else. This is not about being reckless. This is about reclaiming sovereignty, about recognizing that you are the author of your life, that you do not need permission to exist, to choose, to become. These 5 tools work together. They reinforce the inner compass practice. They give you multiple ways to access your own knowing, to strengthen your relationship with yourself, to navigate complexity with more clarity and less dependence. You do not need to master them all at once. Choose one. Try it. See what shifts. Then add another. Build slowly. Trust the process. Trust yourself. Because that is what this is all about. Not perfection, not certainty, but trust. Deep, embodied, lived trust in your ability to know yourself and to choose accordingly. Deep, embodied, lived trust in your ability to know yourself and to choose accordingly. But trust does not exist in a vacuum. It cannot survive in an environment that constantly undermines it. You cannot build self-trust if your life is structured in a way that keeps you disconnected, distracted, dysregulated, and dependent on external validation. Self-trust is not just a skill you practice in isolated moments. It is a way of being. And a way of being requires a supportive structure. It requires daily habits that center you, relationships that honor you, an environment that allows you to hear your own voice instead of drowning it out with noise. This is where the work becomes less about technique and more about lifestyle. Less about what you do in a specific moment and more about how you live every day. Less about individual choices and more about the conditions that make those choices possible. Start with your daily rhythms. The way you begin and end your day matters. These are the bookends that hold everything else in place, and if they are chaotic, rushed, reactive, you will spend your entire day trying to catch up, trying to keep up, never quite finding the ground beneath you. A morning routine does not need to be elaborate. It does not need to involve an hour of meditation or a complex ritual. It just needs to center you, to bring you back into your body, into yourself, before the demands of the day pull you outward. This might look like 5 minutes of sitting in silence with your coffee, noticing your breath, noticing how you feel. It might look like moving your body, stretching, walking, anything that gets you out of your head and into sensation. It might look like journaling, asking yourself, what do I need today? What do I already know? What is asking for my attention? The key is consistency. The key is prioritizing this time, protecting it, treating it as non-negotiable. Because when you skip it, when you roll out of bed and immediately check your phone, immediately start responding to the world's demands, you lose the thread. You lose connection to yourself, and you spend the rest of the day trying to find it again. The same is true for evenings. You need a way to close the day, to reflect, to process, to let go of what you carried so that you do not take it into your sleep, into tomorrow, into the accumulation of unprocessed experiences that eventually become overwhelm. This might look like writing down 3 things that went well. Not to force positivity, but to train your brain to notice what is working, what you trusted, what you chose that felt aligned. It might look like a body scan, releasing the tension you accumulated, thanking your body for carrying you through. It might look like asking yourself, what did I learn today? What do I want to remember? What do I want to release? These practices do not take long, but they create space. Space to hear yourself. Space to integrate. Space to build the self-awareness that self-trust depends on. And beyond these daily rhythms, you need regular solitude. Not isolation. Not loneliness. But intentional time alone, away from the voices and opinions and expectations of others. Time where you do not have to perform, adapt, or explain yourself. Time where you can simply be, and in that being, remember who you are. This is hard for many people. Solitude can feel uncomfortable, even threatening, especially if you have spent years avoiding yourself, staying busy, filling every moment with noise to drown out the doubts and fears you do not want to face. But solitude is where your voice lives. It is where you hear what you actually think, what you actually want, what you actually know, and you cannot trust yourself if you never spend time with yourself. Start small, an hour a week, a walk alone, a meal eaten in silence, a morning without plans, without input, without distraction. Notice what arises. Notice what you have been avoiding. Notice what becomes clear when the noise stops. And speaking of noise, you need to reduce it. Because your environment is constantly feeding you information, opinions, comparisons, expectations, and if you are consuming too much, if you are scrolling endlessly, if you are letting every voice on the internet into your mind, you will drown out your own. Limit social media. Curate your inputs. Be ruthless about what you allow into your attention. Every piece of content you consume shapes your thinking, your mood, your sense of what is possible and what is normal. If you are consuming content that makes you feel inadequate, uncertain, dependent on external validation, you are working against yourself. This does not mean you cut yourself off from the world. It means you become intentional. You choose what you consume. You ask, is this nourishing me? Is this helping me hear myself? Or is this just more noise? Protect your attention. It is one of the most valuable resources you have. And you cannot trust yourself if your attention is fragmented, scattered, constantly pulled in 1,000 directions by algorithms designed to keep you hooked. Now let us talk about relationships, because the people you surround yourself with either support your self-trust or erode it. And you need to know the difference. People who support your self-trust reflect you back to yourself. They ask questions instead of giving answers. They listen without imposing. They trust you to know yourself, even when you do not yet trust yourself. They celebrate your autonomy. They do not need you to be a certain way to feel comfortable. They do not take it personally when you make choices they would not make. People who undermine your self-trust need you to be uncertain. They need you to defer. They offer unsolicited advice constantly, not because you asked, but because they cannot tolerate you making your own choices. They question your decisions, not with curiosity, but with judgment. They make you feel small, doubtful, incapable. They are threatened by your autonomy because it disrupts the dynamic they depend on. You need to identify who is who, and then you need to set boundaries. This does not mean you cut everyone out of your life who has ever questioned you. It means you protect your space to hear yourself. You stop over-explaining. You stop seeking validation from people who will never give it. You stop tolerating relationships that require you to shrink, to doubt, to defer in order to keep the peace. You learn to say, I appreciate your perspective, but I have already decided. You learn to say, I am still figuring this out, and I do not need advice right now. You learn to say, I do not know yet, and that is okay. That last one is important. I do not know yet. Without shame, without apology, without the need to justify why you are taking your time, why you are not rushing to a decision, why you are waiting for clarity instead of forcing a choice. You are allowed not to know yet. You are allowed to sit in uncertainty without collapsing into it. You are allowed to wait for your own knowing to emerge instead of grasping for someone else's. And if people cannot tolerate that, if they need you to have answers you do not have, if they pressure you to choose before you are ready, that tells you something about them, not about you. Let us talk about your body, because you cannot trust yourself if your nervous system is dysregulated, if you are chronically exhausted, undernourished, sleep-deprived, or stuck in a state of constant activation. Your ability to access clarity, to feel your instincts, to discern between fear and knowing, all of that is compromised. Your body is the foundation, and if the foundation is unstable, everything built on top of it will be shaky. Sleep matters, not as a luxury, as a necessity. When you are sleep-deprived, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making and self-regulation, does not function well. You become more reactive, more anxious, more prone to doubt. You lose access to the calm, grounded state where self-trust lives. So prioritize sleep, protect it, treat it as important as any meeting, any deadline, any obligation. Because it is. Nutrition matters, not in the diet culture sense, not in the restrictive, controlling sense, but in the sense that your body needs fuel, needs nourishment, needs stability. If your blood sugar is crashing, if you are running on caffeine and adrenaline, if you are ignoring hunger or eating in a way that leaves you foggy and depleted, you are making self-trust harder. Eat in a way that supports you, that gives you energy, that feels good in your body. Trust yourself to know what that is. Movement matters, not because you need to earn your body or burn calories or achieve some external standard, but because movement is how you come back into your body, how you release tension, how you metabolize stress, how you remember that you are not just a brain in a jar, but a living, breathing, embodied being. Move in ways that feel good, that feel like a return to yourself, not a punishment. Walk, stretch, dance, swim, whatever brings you home, and rest matters, real rest, not just sleep, but downtime, time when you are not producing, not optimizing, not working toward a goal, time when you are simply existing, allowing, being. You cannot hear yourself when you are constantly in motion. You cannot access your knowing when you are always pushing. Rest is not laziness. Rest is the space where clarity emerges. Finally, let us talk about values. Because when you know what matters to you, decisions become easier. When you have a clear sense of your values, your inner compass has a true north. You have a reference point, a way to evaluate choices that is not dependent on what others think, what seems practical, or what you have been told you should want. Your values are yours, not inherited, not imposed, not borrowed from a culture that may not share your priorities. Yours. So take time to clarify them. Ask yourself, what do I care about most? What do I want my life to be built on? What qualities do I want to embody? What kind of person do I want to be? This is not about abstract ideals. This is about what actually matters to you in your lived experience. Is it creativity, connection, freedom, integrity, growth, service, beauty, adventure, Write them down. Name them. Make them explicit. Because when you are clear on your values, you can use them as a filter. When you are facing a decision, you can ask, does this align with my values? Does this move me toward what matters most? Or does this pull me away? And when a choice aligns with your values, you can trust it, even if it is hard, even if others do not understand, even if the outcome is uncertain, because you are not just choosing based on what feels safe or what others approve of. You are choosing based on what is true for you. This is how you build a life that supports self-trust, not through isolated practices, but through a comprehensive structure. Daily rhythms that center you, solitude that lets you hear yourself, reduced noise that protects your attention, relationships that honor your autonomy, a regulated nervous system that allows clarity, and values that guide your choices. This is not easy. This requires intention. This requires saying no to things that do not serve you, even when they are comfortable, familiar, expected. This requires building something new, something that may not look like anyone else's life. But it is worth it, because this is how transformation becomes sustainable. This is how self-trust stops being something you practice in moments and becomes something you live every day. This is how self-trust stops being something you practice in moments and becomes something you live every day. But perhaps you still doubt. Perhaps a part of you wonders if this is real, if this is possible, if this is anything more than hopeful thinking dressed up as wisdom. Perhaps you need to know that what you are doing is not just psychological, it is biological. Not just philosophical, it is neurological. Not just a story you are telling yourself, but a process grounded in the actual structure and function of your brain. So let us talk about the science. Let us talk about what happens in your brain when you trust yourself versus when you constantly defer to others. Let us talk about why self-trust feels so hard, and why, despite that difficulty, it is absolutely learnable. Your brain is a prediction machine. This is not a metaphor. This is how it actually works. Your brain is constantly generating predictions about what will happen next based on past experience. It takes in sensory information from the world and from your body, compares it to stored patterns, and produces a best guess about what is coming and how you should respond. This process is largely unconscious. It happens faster than you can think, and it is designed to keep you safe, to help you navigate, to allow you to respond to threats and opportunities without having to consciously analyze every situation. But here is the problem. If your past experience taught you that trusting yourself is dangerous, your brain will predict that trusting yourself now will also be dangerous. It will generate that prediction automatically, before you even have a chance to evaluate whether it is accurate. And that prediction will manifest as anxiety, as doubt, as the overwhelming urge to check with someone else before you move forward. This is not a flaw. This is your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is trying to protect you based on the information it has. But the information it has is outdated. And that is where the work comes in. Every time you trust yourself and survive, every time you make a choice based on your own knowing and the world does not collapse, your brain registers a prediction error, a mismatch between what it expected, danger, criticism, failure, and what actually happened. You were okay. You handled it. You learned. You adapted. And prediction errors are how the brain learns. They are how it updates its models of the world. When your brain predicts one thing and experiences another, it recalibrates. It adjusts. It begins slowly to generate new predictions. Predictions that say, maybe trusting yourself is not as dangerous as I thought. Maybe you can handle this. Maybe you know more than I gave you credit for. This is why the small steps matter. This is why acting small and observing is so powerful. You are not just building confidence in a vague emotional sense. You are literally retraining your brain's predictive model. You are teaching it, through repeated experience, that self-trust leads to survivable outcomes. And over time, those outcomes become the new baseline, the new expectation, the new prediction. But this process takes time, because your brain does not update based on one data point. It updates based on patterns, based on repetition, based on enough evidence to outweigh the old predictions that have been reinforced for years, maybe decades. This is where neuroplasticity comes in. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself, to form new neural connections, to change its structure and function in response to experience. And it means that you are not stuck with the brain you have. You can reshape it. You can build new pathways. You can replace old patterns of doubt with new patterns of confidence. But neuroplasticity requires repetition. It requires consistency. It requires doing the thing over and over until the new pathway becomes stronger, more efficient, more automatic than the old one. This is why practice matters. This is why the tools and rituals and daily habits are not optional extras. They are the mechanism through which change happens. Let us talk about rumination. When you are stuck in self-doubt, when you are replaying conversations, analyzing decisions, spiraling through what-ifs and should-haves, you are activating a network in your brain called the default mode network. This network is active when you are not focused on a specific task, when your mind is wandering, when you are lost in thought about yourself, your past, your future. The default mode network is not inherently bad. It is involved in self-reflection, memory consolidation, imagining future scenarios. But when it becomes overactive, when it gets stuck in loops of negative self-referential thinking, it keeps you trapped. You are not moving forward. You are rehashing. You are reinforcing the very patterns you are trying to escape. Self-trust interrupts this loop. When you pause, ground, and tune into your body, when you shift from thinking about yourself to sensing yourself, you deactivate the default mode network and activate other networks, networks involved in present moment awareness, in interoception, in executive function. You move out of rumination and into action, out of the spiral and into clarity. Interoception is your brain's ability to sense the internal state of your body. It is how you know you are hungry, tired, in pain, anxious, excited. It is mediated by a region of the brain called the insula, which integrates signals from your body and generates your felt sense of what is happening inside you. And here is the key. Interoception is the foundation of intuition. When you say you have a gut feeling, when you sense that something is off, when you know something before you can articulate why, you are accessing interoceptive information. Your body is processing signals from your environment, from your past experiences, from subtle cues you are not consciously aware of, and delivering a verdict in the form of sensation. People with stronger interoceptive awareness tend to have better decision-making, better emotional regulation, and yes, more self-trust. Because they can feel their own responses, they can distinguish between anxiety and knowing. They can read their body's signals and use them as information. And interoceptive awareness can be trained. This is what the somatic check-in does. This is what grounding practices do. They strengthen the connection between your brain and your body. They make you more fluent in the language of sensation. They allow you to access the intelligence that lives below the level of conscious thought. Now let us talk about stress. Chronic stress and anxiety do not just make you feel bad. They change your brain. Specifically, they affect the hippocampus, a region involved in memory, learning, and contextualizing experiences. Chronic stress causes the hippocampus to shrink. It impairs your ability to form new memories, to distinguish between past and present, to assess situations accurately. When your hippocampus is compromised, you lose context. You perceive threat even in safe situations. You react to the present as if it is the past. You cannot separate an old wound from a new experience. And this makes self-trust nearly impossible, because you cannot accurately assess whether your instincts are responding to what is actually happening or to something that happened years ago. This is why regulating your nervous system is not optional. This is why sleep, rest, nutrition, movement, all the things we talked about in the previous section, are not just lifestyle tips. They are neurological necessities. They create the conditions for your brain to function the way it is supposed to. They allow your hippocampus to recover, your prefrontal cortex to stay online, your interoceptive signals to be clear instead of scrambled by chronic activation. When your nervous system is regulated, when you are not living in a constant state of fight or flight, your brain can do what it does best: integrate information, make nuanced decisions, learn from experience, and generate accurate predictions. Self-trust becomes easier, not because you have suddenly become more capable, but because your brain has the resources it needs to support you. Let us talk about autonomy. Research in psychology consistently shows that autonomy, the sense that you are in control of your own choices, that you are acting according to your own values and preferences, is one of the most important predictors of well-being. People who feel autonomous report higher life satisfaction, lower anxiety, better relationships, and greater resilience in the face of adversity. And self-trust is the foundation of autonomy. You cannot feel autonomous if you do not trust your own judgment. You cannot act according to your own values if you are constantly deferring to others. You cannot feel in control of your life if every decision requires external validation. This is not selfish. This is not about ignoring the wisdom of others, or refusing to collaborate, or pretending you know everything. This is about reclaiming the authority over your own life that was taken from you, or that you gave away, or that you never learned to claim in the first place. Studies in neuroscience show that when people make autonomous choices, choices that feel self-directed rather than externally imposed, they experience greater activation in the brain's reward centers. They feel more motivated, more engaged, more alive. Their choices feel meaningful, not just obligatory. And when people are forced into choices, when they feel controlled, when they act out of compliance rather than conviction, the opposite happens. The reward centers go quiet. Motivation drops. The choice feels hollow, burdensome, disconnecting. Your brain knows the difference. Your body knows the difference. And the more you practice self-trust, the more you strengthen the neural pathways associated with autonomous, self-directed action. The more natural it becomes, the more it feels like who you are, rather than something you are trying to do. Let us talk about social learning. Humans are wired to learn from others. This is adaptive. This is how we survive. We watch what others do. We listen to what they say. We adjust our behavior based on social feedback. But this system can be hijacked. When the feedback you receive consistently tells you that your instincts are wrong, that your preferences are invalid, that your knowing cannot be trusted, you internalize that. You learn to override yourself. You learn to defer. But just as you learned to distrust yourself through social feedback, you can learn to trust yourself through new social feedback. This is why the trusted counsel matters. This is why relationships that honor your autonomy are so important. When people reflect back to you that you are capable, that your instincts are valid, that your choices make sense, your brain begins to internalize that instead. You do not need everyone to validate you. You need enough people, the right people, to create a new pattern of social learning. A pattern that says, you are trustworthy, you know yourself, you are capable. And over time, this external validation becomes internal. You no longer need others to tell you that you are capable. You know it, because you have tested it, because you have lived it, because your brain has enough evidence, enough prediction errors, enough updated models to generate a new baseline. I can trust myself. This is not magic. This is not a leap of faith into the unknown. This is biology. This is neuroscience. This is the predictable, repeatable process of how brains learn, how patterns change, how new ways of being become possible. Your brain is designed to learn this. It is plastic. It is adaptable. It is capable of change at any age, in any circumstance, given the right conditions and the right repetition. The doubt you feel is real. The difficulty is real. But so is the possibility. So is the path forward. So is the science that says you can do this, that you are doing it right now, with every pause, every grounded breath, every small choice you make, based on your own knowing. This is not wishful thinking. This is not self-help fantasy. This is how your brain works. And when you align your practices with how your brain works, change is not just possible, it is inevitable. You are rewiring. Right now, with every repetition, with every moment you choose to trust yourself instead of deferring, with every prediction error that teaches your brain something new. And the brain you are building, the patterns you are strengthening, the neural pathways you are carving, they are leading you somewhere. Somewhere steadier, somewhere clearer, somewhere you can finally trust yourself to go. Somewhere you can finally trust yourself to go. But knowing the science is one thing, living it when the pressure is on is another. Because real life does not wait for you to feel ready. Real life does not pause while you practice in low-stakes situations. Real life comes at you with high stakes, with consequences, with moments where everything feels like it is on the line, and you have to choose anyway. This is where self-trust is tested. This is where you discover whether the practices you have been building can hold you when the ground is shaking, when the voices are loud, when the outcome is uncertain, and the cost of being wrong feels unbearable. So let us talk about what self-trust looks like under pressure. Because it doesn't look like calm certainty. It doesn't look like having all the answers. It doesn't look like moving through crisis without doubt or fear. It looks like staying present with uncertainty. It looks like trusting your ability to handle whatever comes next, even when you do not know what that will be. It looks like choosing, moving, adapting, without abandoning yourself in the process. Imagine you are facing a career crisis. You have been let go, or the company is collapsing, or you realize, suddenly and undeniably, that you cannot stay in this job another year, another month, maybe not even another day. The fear is immediate and consuming. What will you do? How will you pay your bills? What if you make the wrong choice? What if you leave and regret it? What if you stay and waste more time? Everyone has an opinion. Your family tells you to be practical, to stay, to wait it out. Your friends tell you to take the leap, to follow your passion, to not settle. The internet tells you 1,000 conflicting things. And underneath all of it, your own voice is there, quiet but insistent, saying, I cannot do this anymore. I have to move. I have to change something. This is the moment. This is where you either trust yourself or you do not. And trusting yourself here doesn't mean knowing the outcome. It doesn't mean having a perfect plan. It does not mean eliminating all risk. It means listening to what you know, even when what you know is uncomfortable, even when it conflicts with what seems safe or logical or acceptable to others. You pause. You ground. You feel your body. You notice the tightness in your chest when you imagine staying. You notice the fear when you imagine leaving. But beneath the fear, there is something else. A clarity, a knowing, a sense that staying is no longer an option, that you have to trust yourself to find a way forward, even when the path is not clear. And so you choose, not perfectly, not without fear, but with trust. Trust that you will figure it out. Trust that you can handle the uncertainty. Trust that choosing based on your knowing, even when it is scary, is better than choosing based on fear or obligation or what someone else thinks you should do. This is self-trust under pressure. This is what it looks like when the stakes are high. Or imagine a relationship is ending. Maybe you are the one ending it. Maybe it is being ended for you. Either way, the loss is real, the grief is real, and the doubt comes rushing in. Did I do the right thing? Did I give up too soon? Did I stay too long? What if I never find this again? What if I am making a mistake? You will be tempted to reach outward, to ask everyone you know if you did the right thing, to search for validation, for reassurance, for someone to tell you that you are not throwing away something precious, that you are not going to regret this for the rest of your life. But deep down, you already know. You know why you left or why it ended. You know what was not working. You know what you needed that was not there. You know, even through the grief, that this was the right choice. Not because it feels good, but because it feels true. And self-trust under pressure means honoring that knowing even when it hurts, even when you are lonely, even when everyone around you is questioning your decision, even when you question it yourself in the middle of the night. It means returning to your center, again and again. Every time the doubt pulls you away, every time the fear tells you that you made a mistake, you come back. You remind yourself, I know why I did this. I trust that I was listening to something real. I trust that I can handle what comes next. This is not about never doubting. This is about returning to your center after doubt. This is about resilience, about the ability to waver without collapsing, about the ability to feel fear without letting fear make your choices for you. Or imagine a financial setback. You made an investment that did not work out. You took a risk that failed. You trusted your judgment and it cost you. Now you are facing consequences. Debt, instability, the need to rebuild. The inner critic is loud now. It tells you that you are irresponsible, foolish, incapable of making good decisions. It tells you that this is proof you should never have trusted yourself, that you should have listened to the people who warned you, that you are not cut out for this level of autonomy. And the temptation is to believe it, to use this outcome as evidence that your instincts are broken, to retreat back into dependence, back into seeking external validation, back into letting others make your choices because at least then You can blame them when things go wrong. But self-trust under pressure means separating outcome from process. It means recognizing that a bad result does not mean your instincts were wrong. It means asking, did I make this choice from a place of clarity or a place of fear? Did I listen to myself, or did I override myself? Did I trust my knowing, or did I trust my desperation? And if the answer is that you made the best choice you could with the information you had, if you listened to yourself and acted with integrity, then the outcome does not invalidate that. It just means you are learning. It means you have more information now. It means you can adjust, adapt, make a different choice next time. Self-trust is not about being infallible. It is about being willing to learn from your mistakes, without using those mistakes as a reason to stop trusting yourself. And this requires self-compassion. It requires being able to say, I did my best. I made a choice. It did not work out the way I hoped. And that is okay. I am still trustworthy. I am still capable. I am still learning. This is hard, because we live in a culture that equates mistakes with failure, failure with worthlessness. But you are not worthless because you made a choice that did not work out. You are human. You are learning. You are doing the brave, difficult work of trusting yourself in a world that taught you not to. And that work doesn't end just because you get it wrong sometimes. It deepens. It becomes more nuanced. It becomes more real. Now let us talk about the voices that get louder under pressure. Because when the stakes are high, when you are scared, when you are vulnerable, the old voices come back. The inner critic, the catastrophizer, the people-pleaser. They have been quiet, maybe, while you were practicing in safe situations. But now, when it matters, they return with force. The inner critic tells you that you are not good enough, that you are going to fail, that everyone is judging you, that you should have done it differently. It is relentless. It is harsh. It sounds like it is trying to protect you by pointing out every flaw, every mistake, every way you might mess this up. But really, it is trying to keep you small, to keep you from risking, to keep you from trusting yourself, because trusting yourself feels dangerous. The catastrophizer tells you that the worst-case scenario is inevitable, that if you trust yourself and choose wrong, everything will fall apart, that you will lose everything, that you will never recover. It paints vivid pictures of disaster, of ruin, of irreversible consequences. It makes every choice feel like life or death. The people-pleaser tells you that you need to consider everyone else's feelings, everyone else's opinions, everyone else's needs before your own. It tells you that choosing what you want is selfish, that honoring your knowing is inconsiderate, that you should defer, adapt, make yourself smaller so that others are comfortable. These voices are loud, and under pressure they feel true, they feel urgent, they feel like they are telling you something important that you cannot ignore. But here is what you need to know. These voices are not your knowing. They are old patterns, old protections, old strategies that once kept you safe, but now keep you stuck. And self-trust means recognizing these voices without obeying them. It means hearing the inner critic and saying, I hear you. I know you are scared, but I am not going to let you make this decision. It means hearing the catastrophizer and saying, I acknowledge the risk. I see the worst-case scenario, and I am choosing to move forward anyway because I trust myself to handle it. It means hearing the people-pleaser and saying, I care about others, and I also care about myself. And honoring my knowing is not selfish. It is necessary. This is not about silencing these voices. You cannot silence them. They are part of you. They have been with you for a long time. But you can change your relationship with them. You can stop letting them run the show. You can listen, acknowledge, and then choose differently. And when you do this, when you recognize the voices without obeying them, something shifts. The voices lose their power. They become background noise instead of commands. They become information instead of directives. And in that space, your real voice can be heard. The voice that knows, the voice that has always known, the voice that is steady, even when everything else is chaos. This is self-trust under pressure. This is what it looks like to navigate crisis, loss, failure, uncertainty, without abandoning yourself, without collapsing into the old patterns, without giving your power away because the situation feels too big, too scary, too important to trust yourself with. You will not always get it right. You will make choices that do not work out. You will trust yourself and still face consequences. You will act from your knowing and still experience pain, regret, loss. But you will also discover something essential. You can handle it. You can navigate uncertainty. You can make mistakes and keep going. You can trust yourself, even when the outcome is not what you hoped, even when others disagree, even when the path is hard. And every time you do this, every time you stay with yourself through the pressure instead of abandoning yourself to fear or external validation, you strengthen the foundation. You build evidence. You prove to yourself that you are capable, that you are trustworthy, that you can be counted on even when everything is on the line. This is not a shield against hardship. This is a way of moving through hardship with dignity, with integrity, with grace. This is how you become someone who does not just survive crisis, but who meets it with presence, with courage, with trust in your own ability to find a way forward. This is the application. This is the test. And you are ready for it. And you are ready for it. Not because you have mastered every tool, not because you will never doubt again, not because the journey is over, but because you have come this far, because you have done the work, because you are no longer the person who stood frozen in the grocery aisle, paralyzed by the weight of a simple choice. You are no longer the person who needed permission to exist, who waited for consensus before moving, who believed that everyone else knew better than you knew yourself. You are someone different now, and that difference is not something you are trying to become. It is something you already are. You are someone who trusts yourself. Not perfectly, not without moments of doubt or fear or uncertainty, but deeply, fundamentally, in a way that has become woven into the fabric of who you are, how you move, how you choose, how you live. Think about where you started. Think about the exhaustion of constant checking, the loop of overthinking, the way every decision felt like a referendum on your worth. Think about the way you deferred, adapted, disappeared into the expectations of others because you didn't know how to stand in your own knowing. And think about where you are now. You pause before you reach outward. You ground before you spiral. You ask yourself what you already know before you ask someone else what you should do. You listen to your body. You honor your instincts. You make choices, small and large, based on your own clarity instead of someone else's certainty. This did not happen overnight. This happened in 1,000 small moments, 1,000 small choices, 1,000 times you chose to turn inward instead of outward, to trust yourself instead of deferring, to stay with your knowing even when it was uncomfortable, even when it conflicted with what others wanted, even when the outcome was uncertain. You did this. You built this. Choice by choice, breath by breath, moment by moment. You rewired your brain. You interrupted old patterns. You created new pathways. You proved to yourself, again and again, that you are trustworthy, that your instincts are valid, that you are capable of navigating your own life. And now, this is who you are. Not someone who is trying to trust yourself more. Not someone who is working toward self-trust as a distant goal, but someone who knows how to come home to your own knowing. Someone who can stand in uncertainty without collapsing. Someone who seeks wisdom but does not need permission. This is identity integration. This is transformation. This is the moment when the practice becomes the person, when the tools dissolve into a way of being, when you stop doing self-trust and start living it. You are no longer waiting for someone to tell you what to do. You are no longer searching for the perfect answer, the consensus that will make you feel safe, the external validation that will finally be enough. You know now that those things will never be enough, that the certainty you were searching for does not exist outside of you, that the only certainty that matters is the certainty that you can handle whatever comes. And you can. You have proven this. You have faced pressure and stayed present. You have made mistakes and kept going. You have trusted yourself through crisis, through loss, through moments when everything felt like it was on the line. And you survived. You adapted. You learned. You grew. This is who you are now. Someone who does not need perfect clarity to move forward. Someone who can make decisions with ease, not because the decisions are easy, but because you trust yourself to handle complexity. Someone who honors boundaries without guilt, who says yes when you mean yes and no when you mean no, who does not perform for approval or adapt to fit. You show up as you are. And you trust that your presence is enough. The relationships in your life have changed. Some people have fallen away. The ones who needed you to be uncertain, who could not tolerate your autonomy, who were only comfortable when you were smaller than you are. And that is okay, because the people who remain, the people who have stayed, they see you. They honor you. They trust you to know yourself. And the dynamic is different now. More honest, more real, because you are no longer relating from a place of dependence, but from a place of wholeness. Your work has changed. You make decisions without waiting for permission. You trust your expertise. You contribute without hedging, without disclaiming, without apologizing for taking up space. You still seek feedback, but you do not crumble when it is critical. You take what is useful and release what is not. You know what you bring. You know what you are capable of. You trust yourself to navigate challenges, to adapt when things shift, to find solutions when problems arise. Your daily life has changed. You move through the world differently. Decisions that once took hours now take minutes. Choices that once felt heavy now feel lighter. Not because they are less important, but because you trust your ability to choose, to adjust, to handle whatever unfolds. You rest without guilt. You say no without over-explaining. You want things without needing someone else to validate that wanting. You change your mind without treating it as evidence of your inadequacy. You make mistakes without using them as a reason to stop trusting yourself. You have come home to yourself, to your own knowing, to the voice that was always there, waiting, steady, ready to guide you if you would only listen. And you are listening now. Not perfectly, not without moments where the old patterns creep back in, where the doubt gets loud, where you question yourself more than you would like. But those moments do not define you anymore. They do not pull you all the way back into the old way of being, because you know how to return. You know how to pause, to ground, to come back to your center. You know that doubting does not mean you are broken. It means you are human. And you can hold both, the doubt and the trust, without one erasing the other. This is maturity. This is sovereignty. This is what it means to trust yourself deeply, not as a rigid certainty, but as a flexible, resilient, lived relationship with your own inner knowing. And the future stretches out before you now, not as something to be feared or controlled, but as something to be lived. You do not have all the answers. You do not know what will happen next, but you trust yourself to figure it out as you go, to adapt, to learn, to choose again and again from a place of alignment instead of fear. You will face challenges. You will encounter situations where the right choice is not clear, where the stakes are high, where the pressure is intense. And in those moments, you will return to what you know. You will pause. You will ground. You will listen. You will trust. Not because you are certain of the outcome, but because you are certain of yourself. And that is enough. That has always been enough. The voice you were searching for was never outside of you. It was not in the advice columns, the opinions of friends, the certainty of experts, the validation of strangers. It was not in consensus or approval, or the elusive feeling of being sure beyond all doubt. It was here, inside you, all along, quiet beneath the noise, steady beneath the fear, waiting for you to stop looking outward and start listening inward. And now you have found it. Or rather, you have remembered it. You have come back to it. You have rebuilt the connection that was severed, the trust that was broken, the relationship that was lost. You trust yourself now, not as a goal, not as a practice, but as a lived reality, as a way of being, as the foundation you stand on, the compass you navigate by, the voice you listen to when everything else is uncertain. You are home, in yourself, in your knowing, in the quiet certainty that you are capable, trustworthy, enough. And from this place, everything is possible. Not easy, not guaranteed, but possible, because you are no longer waiting for permission. You are no longer searching for someone to tell you what to do. You are no longer living as a stranger to yourself. You are living as yourself, fully, honestly, with all the doubt and courage and humanity that comes with being a person who has learned to trust themselves more than anyone else. This is the transformation. This is the completion. This is where the journey has led you. And now, the rest of your life begins, not as someone who is becoming, but as someone who is, someone who knows, someone who trusts, someone who has finally come home. The voice you were searching for was always here. And now you know how to listen. Now you know how to trust. Now you know that you are enough, that you have always been enough, that the answers you need are not somewhere out there, but somewhere in here. And that changes everything. You are ready. You are whole. You are home. And you are someone who trusts yourself.